Okay, welcome to episode 3 of It's the Food, It's the Food, It's the Food. And for this episode, I'm bringing in my son Jeffrey. He is a very insightful young man. He is in the spectrum. He is very insightful to what's going on in the world, and it can be of some help of trying to describe and what we're trying to do here. And I just want to give a little overview of what it is that we're trying to do. And I have struggled for the better part of 34 years of gaining and losing it, really my whole life, but since 1984 I was obese. I didn't want to go through life obese, and I would gain weight, lose weight, gain weight, back and forth. And I've come to a solution that works, and it works for me. It works for, I believe, anybody, especially if a person has had the same kind of story. So I'm going through my life right now of food, of just the food side and how it was treated. And episode 1, well, we did an introduction, and then episode 1 was my mother, and that she wasn't much of a cook, and me having the boiled frosting cake on my first birthday, the 7-minute icing, pure whipped sugar, and then and the fact I would go on to be a alcoholic, a rather bad alcoholic by the age of 26, and then of course obese. And then episode 2 was Grammy, and my grandmother, who was the opposite of my mother, loved to cook, the most loving, beautiful person. And let's see here, we'll bring back here, right here. In fact, this is a very rare show of really everybody that we're going to be talking about this episode. There's my mother here. This is my grandmother. Very rare to have these 3 people together because they all hated her and she hated them. And but there's Grammy, who loved it, because Grammy's Kitchen, and this is a beautiful cake, and that she baked. This, I guarantee, this was all from scratch. That if she baked that cake, there was not one store-bought cake mix or anything like that. That everything was made from scratch. And then this is her sister, and what's odd about this is that there's 25 years age difference between the two. She is let's see here. Here's my great-grandfather. Here's my grandmother. Here's Shirley, and here's Aunt Dot. And he had her when he was 17, and then 5 years later he had her, and then when he was 44 he had her. So she raised, my grandmother raised Shirley for the most part. His wife, her mother, the mother died when she was only 14. And she went to live. Her and my father grew up as brother and sister for the most part. And let's see if I have another one. And that's let's see here. Yeah, so they grew up. Her and my father grew up as brother and sister, and they've come to play a big part of all this. She would, and her, and this guy right here, my cousin, would become very, very big in my life. And as we get into this episode, and what would happen, it was just. My mother would go on. We'll go. You want to start, Jeffrey?
All right.
All right, we're going to start. My mother, this person here, who would go on to be, to just be a very, very sick. Here's a picture of her later in life. She's unhealthy. I would grow up from this point here. From here we have 1969. Grammy dies, and that is me in 69. And as we go through, there's kindergarten, 67, 68. There's 1970. There's second grade. There's third grade, and you can start to see the change. Fourth grade, fifth grade. I don't have sixth grade. There's seventh grade, and there I am in the eighth grade. That was me just before the start of eighth grade. There's, around the age of 13 years old, there 12. There's 12. There is 15. And there I am, completely wasted out of my mind at 16. And I remember that day. And I'd been out all night the night before and basically had no sleep. And that was my first job at Montgomery Wards. So that's what happened in the 70s after my grandmother died. Those summers, that first summer of 69, summer of 70, summer of 71, my mother said she was sick. She didn't, she was always under some kind of duress and sickness, and she would sleep mostly during the day. She was up at night, and it was for me as a kid, it was nothing but white bread. There would always be bread. There would always be milk, cereal in the morning, Rice Krispies, Corn Flakes. Lunch would always be bologna sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly, Fluffernutter, and that was it. And then there was Kool-Aid. And sometimes there were stale, from a day-old shop, snack cakes, tasty cakes. And they would freeze them, so it'd be frozen tasty cakes, and that was it. And the big thing that started to happen from the moment my grandmother died is I started stealing money for food, and that's something that would stay with me a long time until I got sober, being a petty thief. I didn't steal from stores. I stole change and dollars from people that loved me.
Everything happens, for a reason. I guess you look at the correlations, I guess, with... Yeah. No, everything people don't do. There's always their side to why they do what they do. There's no such thing as no reason. So,
yeah. No, but...
growing up with my father, I would always, I used to think that, there was no reason, it just happened, but no, everything is for...
there was a reason, and in those years, I just want to bring this out, that there was nobody in my life, in my neighborhood, in my family, when you go to all that. Now, my mother had family, and it was right here. We would go. This was the woman that raised my mother. My grandmother, my mother's mother died when she was 14. This is her sister. These two people both left my mother substantial amounts of money when they died. My mother blamed them for all. My mother was a person, negative transference, blamed them for all her problems. This is my mother's brother.
And negative transference is when you blame other people for your troubles and you take it out on them and you suppose it's their fault. And this is something that one of my therapists that I've had in the past would tell me that I'm doing. And they would, and she would try, as we would try to look into my mental health and explore.
Well, that came from my mother. And actually, here we go. Here's my grandmother right here. Just she was sick. She died of breast cancer. This is my mother's brother, and so my mother grew up with, and with had to be raised by somebody else. And
And you're saying how his mother was bipolar. I have bipolar too.
Yeah, and you know, it just, there was nobody in my life that, other than, I'm going to point out one person, and which was right here. Here's my aunt. Here are the two sisters, and this person here, her husband. He was a quote unquote health food nut, and he was the only voice of saying that bologna's bad for you, hot dogs are bad. Talk about nitrates back in the 70s.
Number one carcinogens.
Yeah, so he was the only voice, but he was very misguided with like everybody, you know, with what he thought, because he believed the standard American diet hype. He was very committed to dairy. He was very committed to eating fish, salmon,
especially salmon,
farm raised
salmon.
And this is a debate about dairy and about salmon, but I can tell you, for me, for what I do now, I in practicing calorie density, I don't eat those things. I eat things that are much more calorie diluted, and but these were the people in my life, and so nowhere in those years that I was alive, there was anybody that's talked about nutrition, talked about and as far as my mother's health, which just deteriorated, and chain smoker, alcoholic, and I'm going to show a pretty harsh picture of her right now. I mean, this is my this is later years, but this is my recollection. Her being intoxicated. Look at an ashtray full of cigarette butts, books, reading books, and laying in bed. And that's my memory. And I'm the oldest of 4 kids. And how many times I had to change diapers, make lunches, play with the kids, watch them, be. This is how I lived my life growing up. And
like you had no support system.
She left my father in December 28th, 1972. Then it was just me and my father. And the thing with that is that when you go to that, when you go to that, when it's just me and my father, this is what happened. I started, we ate out every night. We either went to McDonald's, Burger King, or a diner. And I started to gain a little bit of weight, and he made fun of me. He was merciless with the way he made fun of me. And so that was, I just did not want to be overweight. I did not want to go through life obese. And as we go through a little more through those years, my father was going to in 1976 got lung cancer. There he is, just before he died. He got terrible lung. He died when I was 14. So my father dies. I end up going into a group home, a foster home. I lived in an institution for a while. My brothers and sisters, they bounced around. I started drinking, smoking marijuana every day, but nowhere was there any regard for eat vegetables, drink lots of water, get exercise. Nothing. There was nowhere, whether it was media, whether it was family, no matter what, it was perfectly acceptable, as it is today, no different today, to eat, to just exist on fast food, pizza and Chinese. That's Chinese food, pizza, and fast food. And to eat that on a regular basis, to this day, is completely acceptable. And so this, as we go forward through this, we're going to get into my weight losses, and we'll get better at this. This is just something we need to get episodes made. We need to get them put up. These will be more polished as time goes on, but just hopefully you get the idea what's going on here. That I had insane people in my life, the people whose charge it was to bring me up. I had nobody. There was no internet. There was no television show. I had nothing, any kind of guidance to give me anything, to go on other than the one guy right here. This guy here, and like I said, his advice and his way was so misguided. So it was the one guy I would turn to. Just he just ate tons and tons of cheese and yogurt and cottage cheese and milk products, because again, you were told that this was healthy stuff. So that's going to be, we're going to wrap this episode up. Thank you so much. If this is down the road and people start watching this, please like and subscribe, and we'll do a better job at bringing this information to you. But we just got to get through the 70s, mother leaving. Oh, mother came back. Father, we lost our house. We moved. We went and lived in a cemetery. My father gets cancer and dies. I end up going to institution, foster home, group home, and then I went to live at this house here. And I start stealing and lying, and I get heavily into alcohol and drugs, and it just my health, my mental health, and everything just spirals. And but there is hope, and right, Jeffrey? I mean, there's always hope, and
Absolutely.
And Jeffrey can attest to the ups and downs, but what I found and what I believe to be the solution. So that's it. We're going to end it. We're out.